Hey there, my name is Megan, and as many of you guys may know, I'm here modeling in Japan for almost about a year now, and now on my about 8th day of quarantine, I thought it'd be a good day to tell you guys the story of how I started modeling, and just my whole journey and basically how I got here. So we'll start from the beginning, where it all started. It was fall of 2017 and it was my first semester of senior year. And to be honest, senior year is really a time where you're a bit confused about what you want to do with your life. And, that's where you're supposed to be making some of the biggest decisions in your life. And it really marks the which path you go down. So basically I was a bit bored, senior year, was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, even though I would output, to my friends, teachers, parents, that I knew what I wanted to do with my life. I was really set that I wanted to do interior design and that I wanted to go to university and, travel. But at the same time, you can't help but wonder what else you could be doing, what other choices and paths you could go down. And then when I happened across a DM from my mother agency, and if you don't know what a mother agency is, they are sort of your mother figures in the modeling industry, and they scout new faces and they develop and help them help advise them in their modeling journey. And so when I happened across this DM from my mother agency, the first thing that came to mind was dude, I'm not a mother. You definitely have the wrong person. If you think that I look like a mother and I am gonna do modeling for maternity stuff, then you got the wrong person, It was not only the title of mother agency that I didn't understand, it was also the fact that my mother agency was just starting out and I was one of their first models that they scouted. So on their page, it was they had freaking, I don't know, 20 followers or something. And I was like, are they legit? But when I found the owners of the agency and who was behind it, I was like, okay, so these are two actual women. And they did modeling in New York and they seem legit, they seem nice, and that this could be something. And so it was just a random freaking day in my first semester of senior year that I decided to get coffee with my mother agents, and that day really changed the rest of my life since then. So it's been about almost 4 years now that I've been with my mother agency. That initial conversation that I had with my mother agents and just meeting them in person and seeing one of my mother agents' modeling portfolios and seeing the work that she's done. So I was like, okay, well, maybe it's time for my parents to find out about this and for my parents to meet these people, So maybe looking back on this, it wasn't the best of ideas to meet two strangers without even telling my parents, but those are just decisions you make at 17 that you're what the heck. I freaking biked to the nearest Starbucks by my house and was okay, let's meet, let's talk, that sort of thing, And so basically the thing that really stuck with me and pushed me throughout modeling, what got me going, was just this curiosity of the unknown. And it's honestly, modeling is such a gamble, because I mean, freaking everyone goes down different paths, everyone's modeling journey is different, I'll go into this later, just about Fashion Week and how every season some models will freaking be I'm not gonna do Fashion Week again, and then next season comes around and they're ooh, but I have some options, so maybe, And so when I met my mother agents in real life, all of this came to be more real and more legit when they were saying big names freaking New York City, Milan, Paris, London. This is it, this is what every little girl dreams of, And I never even thought that this could be a possibility in the trajectory of my life and where it could lead me. So then just big talk about brands and possibility and interest and traveling and being signed to an agency really got me hooked, And then I was why not? I could make some time for this, And so basically the whole rundown with my mother agents was the goal was to be signed with an agency in New York, because in America, starting modeling, that is where the legit market to be in, because New York leads to the European market and big fashion houses are based there. So there could be Fashion Week and the whole cycle and everything, and then you do campaign season and blah blah blah, and then it's and so when my mother agents mentioned New York, I was immediately hooked, because it had always been a dream ever since I was a kid to go to an East Coast school and to live in New York City, live the freaking Carrie Bradshaw life, because that was the dream. So in the months after meeting my agents, I did a couple test shoots, and test shoots are basically like unpaid shoots with photographers, and it's sort of like a collaboration with photographers, stylists, whoever, you know. And my first time in front of the camera was beyond awkward, and when the photographer even asked for me to walk, like, I felt so cringed out by just me being in front of the camera that I wasn't sure what to do with my body. I was like, how do I walk? Like, I was very robotic. I'll put a picture here, just an example, was not the best. And so when I became more sucked into this world and I became more knowledgeable about how things worked and the possibilities, I became more committed to, you know, doing these shoots and becoming more comfortable in front of the camera, practicing my poses. And, you know, it was like really a time of like evolving, you know, and gaining more confidence within myself and growing and figuring out like beautiful parts about yourself. But basically growing up, I didn't put like a particular amount of attention into myself. Like, I wouldn't like look in the mirror that long, you know. I would just be like, okay, I look okay, like goodbye, you know. I wouldn't like do my makeup much. I wasn't super into fashion. I just wear like more like art teacher clothes and like running clothes. And that was about it, like just comfort over style, whatever, you know. I felt like if I became like more self-aware, that was more like self-absorbed, you know, and I wasn't about that. And so basically the rest of senior year, as my portfolio was growing and I was doing more test shoots, my agency would submit me to New York agencies, and some scouts would come to Texas and I'd meet them and, you know, show them my book and show them my comp card and talk about myself, because these meetings with agencies, you're basically like selling yourself within like 2 minutes or something. Like, they can really like tell who you are right then and there. It's not just about your face, it's about how you carry yourself and overall aura and energy. But after so many tries and not getting any solid positive answers, some agencies would say, yeah, we want to keep an eye on Megan, like we think that she has potential, but you know, not right now. I was starting to lose hope because like I was on a freaking timer, because I'd be graduating spring of 2018, and if I didn't have an agency that I would sign to, then New York City was sort of out of the question for me. And the thing about meeting with scouts is that when you meet the scout, if you have a really positive interaction and you think that things are going really well, that's great and all, but they have to talk with the rest of the team and see if everyone can be 100% on board with this new girl, you know? So spring of 2018, I decided to make the bold move of meeting with New York agencies and, you know, talking in person with these agents, because I knew 100% that I was committed to this industry and that I already put in so much of my effort the past couple months, you know, preparing myself, that I didn't want this effort to be for nothing. Like, I didn't want to fail at this, you know. And to make my mom happy, I did attend some admitted student stay events for some universities in New York that I had applied to and gotten into. And I did that because I wanted to see the possibilities of actually attending an East Coast school, even though I knew it was not going to happen. And during that trip, I met with 5 agencies and got no yeses. And after that meeting, I was honestly crushed, and I was at a really low point in my life because I wasn't sure where I was going to go, because I was really banking on this trip to New York to get signed to an agency and to have somewhere to go after I graduated, because I really did not want to go to an in-state school in Texas and be stuck there. But luckily, my dad helped me get out of that really low point in my life, and he helped me like weigh out my options and figure out what the next step should be. And luckily for me, modeling wasn't completely over, and I still had some interest from a Singapore agency who wanted me on a 2-month summer contract the summer of 2018. And my dad was thinking about that opportunity and how it could be sort of my last shot at modeling and see if I could earn some money, maybe even save up for like school in New York or whatnot, you know, just that like there are possibilities out there and that it's not hopeless in the end. And looking back on this, Singapore seems like such a freaking long time ago, but it was probably one of the trips that changed me the most, because it was my first proper modeling experience, first casting experience, going to castings on my own, you know, hanging out with other models and hearing about their stories. Hey everyone, today is Sunday and it's officially the second week in Singapore so far. The 2 months in Singapore did not go how I had expected, even close to how I'd expected. I did 2 jobs within the 2 months I was there. 2 freaking jobs. That is probably close to like the worst modeling trip you can have, you know? Because I would go to castings almost every day, you know? I would have maybe like 2-3 castings, you know. Singapore isn't a huge modeling market. There is potential there to, you know, build your book, do some cool editorials. And luckily I didn't lose that much money because I didn't stay in the model apartment and I was staying with my family and I didn't have too many expenses besides the freaking 600 stack of comp cards that they gave me. But yeah, basically I just left with a bit of negative, which I would have to pay back if I decided to go back to Singapore anytime soon with that agency. And at that point I had sort of decided that I was done with modeling and that I didn't want to put any more efforts into it because I felt like it was just not working out, and it had become almost a full year that I signed to my mother agency, and because things weren't happening as fast as I had hoped, I was like, yeah, just this is not gonna be it, you know, like I have other ambitions in life. I decided to enroll in an in-state school last minute and pursue my degree in interior design. Today's the second day that I have been living in my dorm, which is crazy. Let's do a little twirl, I guess. So, fall of 2018, I started my first semester of university, but I was already planning on freaking getting on a plane and getting out of that small town. I was trying to make plans of freaking studying abroad like my second semester, finding a way to get out of that place because I didn't want to be stuck in Texas at all, because I had grown up my whole life in Texas, and you know, every freaking kid growing up wants to get out of their hometown when they get older. And in university, I didn't have that many friends, and when I wasn't crying on FaceTime with my sister, I would be scrolling through Google Flights in hopes for like a cheap flight to some small European town, just somewhere away from Texas to get to. And you know, I wanted to think a little bit more locally for the holidays when it became December, and I was like, why not go to New York? So I looked at the prices for flights to New York, and I saved enough from waitressing to buy a round trip ticket, you know, for a week to go to New York City and just go on a solo trip because I had never gone on a solo trip before. And for me, it was really empowering to plan this trip and to be able to save up money and pay for it all on my own around 18 years old, and to go on a plane on my own and just make this stuff happen, because this is your life and you're living it. Things are possible out there, and if you really want something, you can find a way to get it. And so my main motive behind my New York trip was to go visit Syracuse University, which I was planning on transferring to because I got to the point in Texas where I became so lonely and so just like disassociated with my surroundings that I felt like I couldn't stay there any longer, and I really just needed to find an escape. So basically I planned 2 days in Syracuse to visit the school, and the 3 days after I asked my mother agents if they could plan some agency meetings and if they could submit me to some places and I could just walk in and show them my book and say what's up, you know, because this is like just for the heck of it, you know. I planned this New York trip, like not really gonna do much, might as well meet some agencies because I'm bored. And this time I went in with a much better energy because I was sort of empowered by the fact that I had gotten myself from Texas to New York on my own at 18, and I had made this happen, and that this was all in my own doing, you know, that if I wanted to get signed to an agency, I could if I wanted to. And so the fact that I was already enrolled in my second semester of university, I was ready to, you know, continue that life. So I didn't put as much pressure on myself about meeting these agencies, but turns out that was just the right energy that I needed going into these meetings. And my second trip to New York, I went completely on my own. The first time I had gone with my dad, so I still had sort of that comfort of having him there, you know, to fall back on and to help me like navigate around the city and all that. So also being completely on my own really helped my confidence and going in and just meeting these agencies like I didn't even give up. And on my second day of meeting with agencies, my mother agents, last minute, the morning, or was it maybe the night before, they added Wilhelmina to the list of agencies to meet. And turns out, the day I met them, they were completely sold and wanted to sign me. And I was, at that moment, so shocked. One of the craziest moments of my life, because it was so unexpected, because I didn't even think much about that meeting and I didn't think it had gone particularly well, but apparently it worked out. And immediately after, everything happened so fast because my agency wanted me for Fashion Week because I had gone spring of 2019 and I did that purposefully because it was sort of in the intention of they need like new faces for Fashion Week, and so I guess they came at a convenient time and things worked out. And I just had a lot on my mind at that point because I had my freaking university back at home, I had my dorm, because I wasn't sure if it would be a smart move to just stay in New York, and even though I had freaking carry on for a week, just buy clothes and like be able to stay there for a couple of months, or if I should buy a ticket to go back to Texas and, you know, take the stuff out of my dorm and, you know, talk to the counselors, say like I'm dropping out of school, whatever, you know. And basically in that moment I had a lot to think about because I really wasn't prepared for what would happen if an agency was interested in me, because I was used to having so many no's for the past couple months that I was like, nothing's gonna happen, I'm just doing this for funsies. But I had to think about my life back in Texas, my dorm that I just moved into, the classes that I already signed up for, the deposit that I made for study abroad summer of 2019, and just a lot of commitments I had back at home. At that time I was at such a crossroad because for the second time in my life I was faced with one of the biggest choices I had to make. I wasn't sure what I was going to do with my dorm if I were to stay in New York after this 1 week trip. And you know, I wasn't sure if I should continue my second semester of college and, you know, still see if the agency was still interested after my first year of college. And after FaceTiming my parents and my closest friend that I made in Singapore, I came to a conclusion that I had actually came to that conclusion long ago and knew that this answer was what I wanted to do from the beginning, and that was to go with modeling, because it's again that gamble that modeling gives you, that you're not sure of the unknown and you're curious and you want to know what it could be. So after my 1 week trip in New York, I went back to Texas and took all the stuff out of my dorm and said goodbye to the few friends that I had, dropped out of my classes, told my work that I wouldn't be continuing, and took out my payment for that semester, and I was done for university at that time. And from spring of 2019, that was the official start of my modeling career. So I started at Wilhelmina and did my first Fashion Week, but it didn't go completely as planned. I didn't do any A-list shows and I didn't go to any other cities, and, you know, as I was seeing my other friends, you know, succeed more in their first Fashion Week, I was becoming, again, a bit more disappointed. But you have to remember in this modeling process that you cannot compare yourself to other people because everyone's journey is different. You just gotta trust the process. That's what my mother agents always say. And as corny and like, as much as you don't want to hear that, it is true, and I'm so glad that I have trust the process. So after my first Fashion Week in New York, I did a couple lookbooks and I did a couple editorials, did some castings, and Singapore really prepared me for this casting process and how brutal New York can be and how you really have to have thick skin when you go and meet these clients, and, you know, you present your portfolios to them and you talk about yourself confidently and you are your best version of yourself, you know. And around late spring of 2019, I went on my modeling trip to Mexico for 2 months, and there I really built my book even more. And I know building your book is such a process because, also I forgot to say, this is actually pretty important, but what helped me when meeting with agencies was getting this haircut. I got my fringe cut beginning of 2019, and that was one of the moments where I became the most committed that I have been to modeling and to this industry that I ever had been. Because going in with this new look, I met agencies that I had been submitted to before, and they looked at me in a different way and sort of saw something different in me. And after Mexico, I arrived back in New York and did my first big campaign for Uniqlo, and that was also a major milestone in my career because as slow as my career had gone, I was so thankful for this opportunity and just for a client and a casting director just to see something in me and see potential. I was like, damn, thank you. And summer of 2019, it was quite the chaotic time for modeling because I switched agencies. I switched to Supreme Management, and basically my agents had gone from Wilhelmina to Supreme, and this happens a lot in New York and the modeling industry. People, like, agents switch from different agencies a lot. It's pretty rare for agents to stay in one agency for like 5-6 years or so because, you know, things change and, you know, directors change. Put a little here, put a little there, just mix it up. And start of 2020, I had my first European Fashion Week experience. I got flown out to Milan to be on stay with my agency in Milan for 2 months. I was there January, February, and had my first men's fashion week experience and my first women's fashion week experience, and boy oh boy was that a chaotic time. I had freaking like around 18 castings one day, somehow survived after that, but it's a lot of just last minute phone calls from your agencies. But still, during those 2 months, nothing huge really came out of it. I did a couple shows during fashion week, but no huge brands, and even though like there are some good options with big brands, nothing really came out of it, and it just wasn't the moment for me, I guess. And March of 2020, when I arrived in Japan, that's when my modeling career really started to take flight, and I really got such positive responses from clients. I ended up doing some big jobs with some huge brands, and especially during COVID, modeling in Japan has been a lot easier because with the borders closed, no new models can come in, so it wasn't as competitive, and I would really just see the same models at castings, same models at jobs, and we all became so close, the models here in town. It's become like this really like rare moment in modeling where you feel like you have a family and you feel like you have a place. And during 2020, I did my second Uniqlo campaign, and I walked my first A-list show, which was just not sure if it was gonna ever happen. I walked for Sakai through a freaking typhoon. Just that sentence is insane to me, and it's hard to believe that that even happened. And now it's January 2021, and I started off this year getting flown out to London to shoot my first fragrance campaign for a huge high-end brand, and that is just still mind-boggling to me. And I feel so grateful for this journey up to this point, for what it's given to me and the opportunities, and just for really sticking through it and not giving up.